Be me. Daniel, 32 years old. I work as a driving instructor, not race cars, not anything dramatic. Just nervous teenagers, middle-aged people who let their licenses expire, and adults trying not to panic when a delivery truck gets too close. It is a strange job because you spend most of your day sitting beside people who think every mistake is the end of the world. You learn to stay calm. You learn not to grab the wheel unless you absolutely have to. You learn that raising your voice usually makes everything worse. That carried over into the rest of my life. I was patient, maybe too patient. I liked slow routines, coffee before my first lesson, a sandwich from the same deli near the test center, a quiet drive home after work with no music because I had spent all day listening to turn signals, nervous breathing, and people apologizing for stalling. I was not a dramatic guy. I did not chase chaos. Then I met Chloe. She worked at a boutique gym 2 doors down from the driving school office. She was one of those people who made a room feel brighter just by walking through it. Not loud exactly, more like charged. She had this quick smile and sharp way of talking that made you feel like she had already decided you were interesting before you had done anything to deserve it. The first time we spoke, I was standing outside the office trying to get a coffee stain out of my shirt before a lesson. She walked by, looked at the stain, and said, "Rough road test?" I said, "Worse, paper cup with structural failure." She laughed like that was funnier than it was. That was how it started. Small conversations, then coffee, then dinner. Then suddenly I was arranging my schedule around seeing her without noticing that I was doing it. For the first few months, it felt amazing. Chloe was affectionate when she wanted to be. She texted me pictures from her day. She liked when I picked her up from work. She loved spontaneous plans as long as I was the one making them. She said she had never dated a man who made her feel so considered. I took that seriously. If she mentioned she liked a certain pastry, I brought it the next week. If she said she had a hard day, I came over with dinner. If she went quiet over text, I checked in. If she seemed distant, I asked what was wrong. That was just how I understood love. You notice. You show up. You make the other person's life easier where you can. At first, she seemed to love that. She would tell her friends I was old school in the good way. She said I was intentional. She said I made effort look natural. Then her friend group changed. Or maybe they were always like that and I only started noticing later. There was Maya, who described every boyfriend she had ever had as emotionally underdeveloped. There was Jess, who had a podcast microphone in her apartment despite having no podcast, which felt like a warning sign. And there was Amber, who had recently gone through a breakup and started treating all relationships like courtroom evidence against men. When Chloe spent time with them, she came back different, more suspicious, more analytical, more likely to turn a normal moment into a referendum on gender. If I paid for dinner, she said she did not need a provider. If I suggested a place, she said I was assuming leadership. If I asked if she got home safe, she said she was not a child. Then if I did not ask, she said I was emotionally detached. It was like trying to teach someone parallel parking while they kept moving the cones. One night we were at her apartment after dinner. She was scrolling through her phone with that serious expression people get when they are reading something designed to make them unhappy. I asked if everything was okay. She said, "Do you ever think about how much emotional pressure men put on women by constantly pursuing them?" I should have gone home right then. Instead, I asked what she meant. She said women are trained to be receptive objects in relationships. She said men chase, women respond, and that dynamic reinforces patriarchal performance. I nodded slowly because I had learned that nodding bought me a few extra seconds to translate. She said that my efforts sometimes felt like pressure. I asked what effort. She listed things: good morning texts, planning dates, picking her up from work, asking when I could see her next, complimenting her, following up when she seemed upset. Basically, the entire relationship. I asked if she wanted me to stop doing those things. She said she wanted me to stop chasing her. The words landed cleanly, no metaphor, no confusion. Stop chasing her. I asked what that looked like in practice. She said she wanted space to choose me without feeling pursued. She said she needed to know her desire was authentic and not just a reaction to my consistency. She said my attention created a gravitational pull that made it hard for her to hear herself. I remember looking at her little kitchen table. There was a plant dying in the corner because she forgot to water it unless I reminded her. Somehow I was the oppressive gravitational force. I asked if I had done something wrong. She sighed. She said, "This is not about wrongdoing, Daniel." She said, "This is about decentering male pursuit." That was one of those sentences that sounds intelligent until you try to live inside it. I asked if she still wanted to be with me. She looked almost offended. She said, "Of course she did." She said this was about improving the relationship. She said healthy love should not require a man constantly performing devotion. I said I understood. She smiled like I had passed a test. Then she touched my hand and said, "I just need you to let me come to you." So I did. That was the part she did not expect. I stopped chasing her, not angrily, not dramatically, not as some theatrical revenge. I just took her request literally. The next morning, I did not send a good morning text. Around noon, she texted me. "Busy today?" I replied, "A little. Hope your day is going well." That was it. No hearts, no follow-up question, no invitation, no little hook for her to respond to. She answered with, "Thanks." I left it there. That evening, I went to the gym instead of asking if she wanted to come over. The next day, I finished work, grabbed dinner alone, and watched a documentary about old highway systems because apparently that is who I become when unsupervised. She texted at 9. "No plans tonight?" I replied, "Just taking it easy." She sent back, "Cool." Again, I left it there. And I could almost feel her staring at the phone, waiting for me to turn that tiny exchange into attention. But she had said stop chasing, so I stopped. The first week was almost peaceful. I had not realized how much mental space I had been using to monitor her mood. Was she distant because she was tired or because I said something wrong? Was I supposed to ask to see her or wait so I did not seem needy? Was the heart emoji too much? Was no emoji too cold? Once I stopped trying to solve the unsolvable, my life got quieter. After lessons, I stayed late at the driving school and helped my boss reorganize the old records. I started cooking again instead of grabbing food on the way to Chloe's place. I called my brother more. I slept better. Meanwhile, Chloe started testing the edges of the new arrangement. She posted a selfie from the gym with some caption about feminine energy returning when men stop demanding access. I liked nothing. She posted a story from a rooftop bar with Maya and Amber. I did not reply. She sent me a picture of her outfit before going out. I wrote, "Looks nice, have fun." She waited 20 minutes, then wrote, "That's it?" I replied, "What do you mean?" She said, "Never mind." I put my phone down and ate dinner. 2 weeks in, she invited me over. Not directly. That would have required admitting she wanted me to come. Instead, she texted, "I'm probably just staying in tonight." The old me would have read that as an opening. The old me would have said I could bring food. The old me would have turned her vague signal into a plan and then thanked her for allowing me to make it. This time I wrote, "Enjoy the quiet night." She did not respond for 3 hours. Then she sent, "You have been weird lately." I asked how. She said I was distant. I reminded her she had asked me to stop chasing. She said, "I did not ask you to disappear." I looked at that message for a long time. Then I wrote, "I am not disappearing. I am giving you room to come to me." That was her own phrase. She hated seeing it outside her mouth. She called immediately. I let it ring twice, then answered. Her voice had that controlled tone people use when they are trying not to sound upset because sounding upset would prove the other person has power. She said I was being literal in a manipulative way. I said I was trying to respect what she asked for. She said relationships need effort. I agreed. She said she did not want to be the only one initiating. I said I understood, but she had specifically said my initiating felt like pressure. There was silence. Then she said, "You know what I meant." I said, "I am asking you to tell me what you meant." She got frustrated. She said she wanted me to desire her without making her feel pursued. I asked how I was supposed to show desire without pursuit. She said I was turning everything into a debate. I was not. I was trying to find the instruction manual for a game where every rule contradicted the last one. The call ended badly, not with yelling, with her saying she needed space, again, so I gave it to her, again. That weekend, my friend Andre invited me to a barbecue. I almost said no because I'd gotten into the habit of leaving weekends open in case Chloe wanted me. Then I realized how pathetic that sounded inside my own head. So I went. It was just a backyard, cheap folding chairs, smoke from the grill, and people talking over each other. Normal life, peaceful life. A woman there named Natalie asked what I did for work. I told her I taught people how to merge without making peace with God. She laughed. We talked for maybe 15 minutes. Nothing flirty, nothing inappropriate, just easy conversation. I did not think about Chloe once until I checked my phone later and saw 4 messages. The first was, "Are you out?" The second was, "Maya saw Andre's story." The third was, "Who is the woman in the green dress?" The fourth was, "Interesting." There it was, the emergency siren. I looked at Andre's story. It was a 10-second clip of the backyard. I was in the background holding a paper plate, standing near Natalie and 2 other people. That was all. I replied, "Andre had a barbecue." She wrote back instantly. Nice that I had to find out from Instagram. I typed, "You asked me to stop chasing, so I did not assume you needed updates on my plans." She called me. This time I did not answer because I was in the middle of eating a burger and listening to Andre's uncle explain why every modern truck is worse than his old one. I texted, "I will call later." That sent her into a spiral. By the time I got home, I had missed 3 calls. When I finally called back, she was furious. She said I was embarrassing her. I asked how. She said people were asking if we were still together. I asked why they would ask that. She said because I was acting single. I said going to a friend's barbecue was not acting single. She said not inviting her was. I reminded her that she had said she wanted freedom from the pressure of my pursuit. She said, "You are punishing me." I said, "No, Chloe, I am listening to you." That was the problem. For the first time in our relationship, I was not listening to the emotion underneath her words and translating it into what she secretly wanted. I was listening to the actual words, and the actual words were destroying her. Over the next month, the pattern became clear. If I initiated, she called it chasing. If I stopped initiating, she called it neglect. If I complimented her, she said I was seeking validation. If I did not compliment her, she asked if I even found her attractive. If I planned a date, she said I was controlling the dynamic. If I waited for her to plan one, she said I was making her do emotional labor. It was exhausting, but now I could see it. Before, I thought I was failing because I could not find the right behavior. Now I understood the right behavior did not exist. The point was not for me to succeed. The point was for me to keep trying. That was the chase. Not flowers or dates or texts. The chase was me constantly adjusting myself around her approval. Once I stopped doing that, she lost the one thing she actually wanted: control. The real breaking point came on a Friday night. Chloe had a birthday dinner for one of her gym friends. She mentioned it to me casually on Wednesday but did not invite me. The old me would have asked if she wanted me there. The new me did not. Friday came. I finished lessons around 6. I cleaned out the training car because someone had spilled iced coffee in the passenger footwell during a reverse parking lesson. Then I went home, showered, and met Andre for a pool at a bar across town. Around 8, Chloe texted me. "Dinner is kind of boring." I wrote, "Sorry to hear that." She wrote, "What are you doing?" I wrote, "Playing pool with Andre." She wrote, "Oh." Then 10 minutes later, "You could come by after if you want." There it was, a half invitation wrapped in plausible deniability. I looked at the message. I thought about how many times I had dropped my plans because she gave me one little opening. I thought about how good she was at making me feel chosen, when really I was just on standby. Then I wrote, "I already made plans tonight, but I hope the dinner gets better." She did not reply. An hour later, Maya posted a story. Chloe was at the table, smiling too hard, holding a cocktail. The caption said, "When women stop chasing men and choose themselves." I laughed once, not because it was funny, because there is a point where absurdity becomes generous and starts entertaining you for free. The next morning, Chloe showed up at my apartment. No warning, no text. She knocked like the door owed her money. I opened it and she walked in before I invited her. She looked around my living room. There were running shoes by the couch, clean dishes drying near the sink, a book on the coffee table, and a half-built shelf I was making for the entryway. It probably looked calm. That seemed to upset her more. She said, "So this is your new life?" I said, "It is Saturday morning." She said I had changed. I said, "Maybe." She said I was cold now. I said I felt calmer. She said, "You used to care." That one almost got me, because I had cared. Deeply, carefully, constantly. I had cared so much that I let her turn my affection into a performance review. I told her I still cared, but I was no longer auditioning. She crossed her arms. She said, "I never asked you to audition." I picked up my phone, opened our messages, and scrolled to the night she told me to stop chasing her. I read her words aloud. "I need space to choose you without feeling pursued." Her expression changed. Not guilt. I would have respected guilt. It was irritation at the fact that evidence existed. She said, "Normal people understand nuance." I said, "Normal people do not call affection oppression and then panic when it stops." That was the first truly sharp thing I had said. The room went still. She stared at me like I had finally stepped out of the role she wrote for me. Then she started crying. She said she missed how we used to be. She said she missed me planning things. She missed waking up to my texts. She missed feeling wanted. She missed knowing I would show up. I listened. I did not interrupt. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for weeks. "Did you miss me or did you miss being chased?" She looked wounded, but she did not answer. That was an answer. She sat down on my couch and started explaining. She said she had felt overwhelmed. She said her friends had made her think my consistency was some kind of control. She said she needed to feel powerful. She said sometimes being loved by someone steady made her feel guilty because she did not know how to match it. That was the closest she ever came to honesty. For a second, I saw the woman I had first dated, not the slogans, not the performance. Just Chloe, scared and confused and used to being the center of every emotional room. The old me would have softened completely. The old me would have hugged her and promised we could fix it. But the old me was tired, so I said, "I understand." She looked hopeful. Then I said, "But I do not want to be in a relationship where my love is treated like pressure until you are lonely enough to want it back." Her face collapsed. She said, "So what are you saying?" I said, "I am saying I think we are done." The words came out quietly. No drama, no final speech with thunder outside the window, just a calm sentence in a clean apartment on a Saturday morning. She shook her head. She said, "You cannot just walk away because I asked for space." I said, "I am not walking away because you asked for space." I said, "I am walking away because when I gave it to you, I found some for myself." She started pacing. She said I was making a huge mistake. She said I would not find someone who understood me like she did. I almost smiled at that, because understanding me had never been the problem. She understood exactly which buttons to press. She understood how long I would wait. She understood how little affection she could offer before I started trying harder. What she did not understand was that patience has an ending point. It is not loud. It does not slam doors. It just stops extending the deadline. I told her I needed her to leave. She stared at me. I repeated it. "Please leave." She grabbed her bag with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back and said, "If you let me walk out, do not expect me to come back." There it was, the final test. One last chance for me to chase, one last little trap with a ribbon on it. I opened the door wider. I said, "Take care, Chloe." She stood there for 3 full seconds waiting for the old version of me to appear. He did not. Then she walked out. I closed the door gently. I did not block her right away. That came later. First, I stood in the quiet and noticed something strange. I was sad. But under the sadness, there was relief. A clean, steady relief, like finally pulling over after driving too long in heavy rain. The next few days were predictable. She texted that night, "I cannot believe you gave up so easily." I did not respond. The next morning, "So that's it?" I did not respond. Then, "You are really going to throw everything away?" I replied once. "I am not throwing anything away. I am accepting what happened." She sent a long message about how relationships require fighting. I thought about that. Then I wrote, "I fought for us for a long time, but you kept calling it chasing." That was my last message. After that, I blocked her. Not because I hated her, because the door had to stay closed. For weeks, I heard things through mutual friends. She told people I had become emotionally unavailable. She said I punished her for wanting independence. She said I was insecure because she had boundaries. Maya posted vague quotes about men only loving women when they can control them. Amber commented with flame emojis like they were overthrowing something instead of coping with a breakup. I let them have it. I had spent enough time defending myself inside Chloe's vocabulary. I was not going to keep doing it outside the relationship. My life got simple again. Work, gym, friends, dinner with my brother on Thursdays, Saturday mornings at a local park where I started helping a few immigrant adults practice driving theory questions because one of my students asked if I knew anyone who could explain the road signs slowly. It felt good to be useful without being emotionally audited. About 3 months later, I ran into Chloe at a grocery store. Of course, it was in the cereal aisle because life has no sense of dignity. She looked good, but tired. She saw me first. I could tell from the way her face froze. I said hello. She said hello back. For a moment, we were just two people standing between oatmeal and cornflakes. Then she asked how I was. I said I was good. She waited for me to ask how she was. I did because I am not cruel. She said she was okay. Then she said, "I thought you would reach out eventually." I said, "I know." That hurt her more than if I had pretended surprise. She asked if I ever missed her. I said I missed parts of what we had. She asked which parts. I said the earlier parts, before everything became a test. She looked down at her basket. There was a long silence. Then she said, "I did not think you would actually stop." That was the whole relationship in one sentence. She did not think I would actually stop. She thought my affection was a resource she could criticize, restrict, shame, and still access whenever she wanted. She thought telling me to stop chasing her would make me chase more carefully, more anxiously, more obediently. She never considered that I might hear the instruction and choose peace. I told her, "I know." She looked up with wet eyes and said, "I panicked when you did." I did not know what to say to that, so I said the truth. I did not want you to panic. I said, "I wanted you to be clear." She nodded. Then she asked if there was any chance we could talk sometime. I looked at her. I really looked at her. There was still beauty there, still the quick smile hiding somewhere behind the exhaustion, still the woman who once laughed at my coffee-stained shirt. But there was also the memory of the couch, the accusations, the moving goalposts, the feeling of being a man constantly reaching for someone who kept stepping back just far enough to make me reach harder. I said, "No, Chloe." Not harshly, not proudly, just no. She nodded again, but this time it looked like something inside her finally accepted the shape of things. We said goodbye. I walked to the checkout line. My hands were steady. My chest felt clear. Outside, the air was cold. I loaded my groceries into the car and sat for a moment before starting the engine. I thought about all those driving lessons where students panic and overcorrect. They jerk the wheel too hard. They brake too late. They stare at the obstacle instead of the road. The first thing I always tell them is simple. Ease off. Look where you want to go. Then move there smoothly. That was what I had done. I eased off. I stopped staring at the obstacle. I looked toward a life that did not require chasing someone who kept running just to feel wanted. Then I moved there, smoothly, quietly, and I never looked back.